Hello, and thank you for tuning in to our podcast, Manna at the Tap. It's Friday, April the 19th, 2024, and we are in the third week of the season of Easter. I'm your host, Gloria, and today our lectionary text can be found in the book of beginnings, the book of Genesis. And we're pretty close to the end of the book of Genesis. We are at chapters 46 and 47. And these chapters cover the story of Joseph, his reuniting with his aged father, Jacob, and repairing his tenuous relationship with his brothers amidst a famine. This story would make a great movie. So let's lay out the context. Joseph, at around 17 years of age, was sold into slavery by his brothers because he was their father's favorite child with his coat of many colors. And Joseph had a smart mouth. He told them they would all have to bow to him someday. These statements infuriated them. So they sold him to some strangers on their way to Egypt. Joseph was in a foreign land, speaking a foreign language, and as a refugee, he found work. But like so many other refugees, he was accused of a crime he did not commit. He was charged with going after the boss's wife, and he ended up in prison. He was languishing there, wondering why, only to hear the word of the Lord. Joseph, I'm with you. Joseph had the opportunity to interpret the Pharaoh's disturbing dream. He told him that a famine was coming that the world had never seen before, but there would be an opportunity to prepare for the famine because there would be 7 years of abundance. If the Pharaoh collected and stored the abundance, then Egypt could feed itself and the world. The Pharaoh listened to Joseph and appointed him in charge. One day in the famine, Joseph had the surprise of his life. He recognized a group of men who were his older brothers, but they did not recognize him because they thought he was long dead. It would take a couple of years before Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers through asking them questions about their father and younger brother at home. The famine was immense. Jacob had to send his sons again to Egypt to get grain. And when Joseph revealed himself to his brothers, he longed to see his father Jacob again. Our lectionary text reading picks up here at Genesis chapter 46, verse 28, and takes us over to Genesis 47, verses 1 to 6. Jacob, his family, his little ones, and all they possessed headed for Egypt at the invitation of the Pharaoh. As they got close, Jacob sent his now trusted son Judah ahead to get instructions from Joseph where they would live. They were to live in the land of Goshen. Now, it's interesting to note that it was Judah who had suggested the brothers sell Joseph off as an enslaved person those many years before. Now, Judah, he is the leader in the family. His name means praise, and he moves forward first to lead the family. This might give us some insight into the importance of having a word of praise on our lips when we move forward into new situations rather than speaking words of doubt and unbelief. When the family arrived at the appointed location called Goshen, Joseph was there to meet his father, whom he hadn't seen for 22 years. He left as a teenager, and now he was second in command of Egypt. As soon as he saw his father, they both threw their arms around each other and they wept for a long time. Every time I come to this part of the story, the tears begin to fill my eyes. Jacob was overwhelmed when he saw Joseph for himself. He said he was ready to die, but he actually lived for 17 more years in Egypt, soaking up the lost years of missing his son. The place designated for the family to live was a suburb called Goshen. In the meantime, Joseph went to speak to the Pharaoh to tell him that his father and brothers had arrived. Joseph told Pharaoh, the men were shepherds. They tended livestock, which they brought with them. Joseph then coached his brothers on how to speak to Pharaoh, because Pharaoh would ask them about their occupation, and they were to tell him they tended livestock from their boyhood, just as their fathers did. Goshen means the place to draw near, a place of comfort and plenty. The narrator added this note: all shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians. So Jacob and his family would live separated from the Egyptians as they tended their livestock and grew their families. Pharaoh had one request. If any of them wanted to, he would be delighted if they took care of his livestock. Jacob's sons thought they would have been in Egypt until the famine ended, but the family was there for 430 years. Over time, the sons of Jacob migrated from the ghetto of Goshen, where they were shepherds, to the cities of Egypt, where they became enslaved and bricklayers. This is because several pharaohs who came to power did not know the story of Joseph and how he saved Egypt and the world with his skill and insight. But that's another story for another reading from our lectionary. That is when we learn that Goshen, the place to draw near, will be far from their minds. God will have to send Moses, who was drawn out of the river Nile, to bring them back into the home promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm unsure when those lectionary readings will be available, so I invite you to continue following our podcast, Manna at the Top, and I wish you blessings on your day.